So I know we have this broader budget process that typically kicks off early in the year when the president puts out his or maybe her in the future budget proposal. How does the appropriations process fit into the budget process?
Sure. So the appropriations process is sort of the third step or the end, the last train, if you will, of the budget process. The budget process normally starts with the president submitting a budget, Congress holding oversight hearings on those budget proposals, the Congress marking up its own budget resolution or planning document for spending, and then moving forward, passing the 12 annual appropriations bills, passing them through both chambers, conferencing them, and then sending them to the president. So in looking at all of that, the appropriations process is actually the third step in that entire budget process.
Remind me or correct me if I'm wrong, but are we operating under spending caps when it comes to discretionary spending with the budget process, and then that I'm assuming impacts the appropriations process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is the last year of constrained spending according to the Budget Control Act, which was passed in 2011. So this is the last year that we have caps on discretionary spending. And part of what is making this appropriations process even more difficult this year, not only the compressed calendar because of all the time that coronavirus took up earlier in the year. So we've got a compressed calendar to get all this work done before the fiscal year ends on September 30th. But we also have really tight budget caps for fiscal year 2021. We have two buckets of spending, just defense spending and non-defense spending. And the caps this year relative to last year are only about $5 billion higher in each category. So you can imagine with inflation and more needs for spending on different programs, it's really hard to find a way to get all of your discretionary spending to fit within those caps this year when you've only got $5 billion in wiggle room in both buckets.
How has the appropriations process functioned over the last several years? I know we had a government shutdown a couple of years ago. I think it was the longest, at least the longest partial shutdown in our nation's history. So has it been functioning well? Are we heading towards another shutdown? Like what, give me some kind of diagnosis of what's happening here and whether there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
It's all relative, isn't it? So the way the process is supposed to work is that Congress passes an individual appropriation bill, all 12 on an individual basis. They conference them and send them to the president. And they get that done before September 30th every year. That has rarely happened. They've rarely met the deadline. They've rarely been able to pass all 12. So what happened a couple years ago is the process got all gummed up and they started, instead of passing individual appropriations bills at the end of the year, they'd pass one giant omnibus that had all 12 bills in it, plus a tax title perhaps, and maybe some supplemental emergency spending or other things that they needed to tack on. Members got totally upset with having to vote for these gargantuan packages because there was some stuff in there that they liked and some stuff in there that they really hated. And as you can imagine, in some cases, it led to things like a government shutdown because they had finally decided, I've had enough. This is not the way the process is supposed to work. So a couple of years ago, leadership in both chambers got smart and they decided to break up that giant big omnibus into smaller packages. So appropriations bills will still pass on the individual level through subcommittee and committee. But when they get to the floor, either chamber, sometimes they package them together in groups of 2 or 3. For example, 2 years ago, they started moving the defense bill in tandem with the Labor, Health and Human Services and Education bill. Defense bill is a priority for Republicans. Labor H is a priority for Democrats. You move them together. It enables you to get more cooperation on spending levels, and it makes it easier to get the legislation through the process and to the president's desk. So instead of passing these giant, 12 bill omnibuses, they're passing these little 2 and 3 bill grouped packages called mini buses, if you will. And that's sort of the process that they've been using. They still can't get their work done on time. I would fully expect Congress to have to pass a continuing resolution in September that will fund the government through probably early to mid-December. But at that point, that's when you'll start see the earnest effort to start grouping some of these bills together and passing them and getting them to the president's desk.